It's official. West Coast Customs, the legendary car empire that dominated reality TV for over 2 decades, didn't just fade away quietly. What we're about to reveal will absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about Ryan Friedlinghaus, his billion-dollar operation, and the devastating scandals that brought down television's most iconic custom shop. This isn't just another "where are they now" story. This is a nuclear-level exposé of corruption, employee abuse, financial disasters, and industry manipulation that Hollywood desperately tried to bury. The mainstream media won't touch this story because too many powerful networks are involved. MTV, Discovery, Velocity, they all played a part in covering up what really happened behind those garage doors. But we've obtained exclusive insider testimony, leaked financial documents, and bombshell revelations from former employees who are finally ready to speak the truth. What you're about to learn will change how you see reality TV forever. Here's where it gets absolutely explosive. Multiple sources close to the West Coast Customs operation have confirmed that the shop's downfall wasn't just about bad ratings or changing viewer preferences. We're talking about federal investigations, employee lawsuits totaling millions, and a pattern of workplace abuse so severe that it triggered government intervention. The man who built an empire on pimping rides was allegedly running his business like a dictatorship, forcing workers into 12-hour shifts without proper compensation, while delivering cars so poorly constructed they became safety hazards. But that's not even the most shocking part. Industry insiders are now revealing that major networks knew about these problems for years but continued filming anyway because the show was too profitable to cancel. We're talking about a conspiracy of silence that protected a toxic workplace while millions of viewers remained completely unaware of the human cost behind their favorite car transformations. The evidence we've uncovered is absolutely devastating. Former employees describe working conditions so brutal that some required medical treatment. Federal investigators discovered wage theft affecting dozens of workers. And the cars themselves? Multiple sources confirm that many of the amazing transformations you saw on TV were essentially death traps, vehicles so poorly modified that they broke down within weeks of filming. What makes this story even more explosive is how the industry protected Friedlinghaus for so long. Despite mounting complaints, failed projects, and legal troubles, he kept getting renewed contracts and new opportunities. The question everyone's asking now: who was protecting him and why? The answers we've uncovered will shock you to your core. This investigation goes deeper than anyone imagined. We're not just talking about one bad boss or a few disgruntled employees. This is about an entire system that prioritized entertainment value over worker safety, viewer deception over honest craftsmanship, and corporate profits over basic human decency. The ripple effects of what happened at West Coast Customs are still being felt throughout the reality TV industry today. If you're already hooked by this insanity, smash that hype button because this story gets 10x more explosive. We're about to take you behind closed doors into a world where million-dollar budgets disappeared into thin air, where employees were treated like disposable assets, and where the cars that made America fall in love with custom culture were actually elaborate facades hiding dangerous mechanical failures. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. Let's rewind to the beginning and uncover the real origin story that Ryan Friedlinghaus never wanted public. According to multiple sources familiar with the early days, West Coast Customs wasn't born from some noble vision of automotive artistry. It was the desperate gamble of a young mechanic who discovered he could make more money creating flashy, Instagram-worthy modifications than actually building reliable vehicles. The official story claims the shop was founded sometime between 1994 and 1997, but insiders reveal the truth is far more complicated. Friedlinghaus was reportedly bouncing between different garage jobs, getting fired from several positions for what former supervisors described as cutting corners and prioritizing speed over safety. One former colleague, speaking on condition of anonymity, told us, "Ryan was always about the show, never about the substance. Even back then, he cared more about how a car looked in photos than whether it would actually run properly." The incorporation date of 2000 wasn't a celebration of success. It was damage control. Sources close to the early operation reveal that Friedlinghaus was facing multiple lawsuits from customers whose cars had been damaged during modifications. The corporate structure was allegedly designed to protect his personal assets, while limiting liability for the increasingly dangerous work coming out of his shop. This pattern of prioritizing legal protection over customer satisfaction would define West Coast Customs for the next 2 decades. What's truly shocking is how early the warning signs appeared. Former employees from the late 1992s describe a workplace where safety regulations were routinely ignored, where workers were pressured to complete impossible deadlines, and where customer complaints were handled through intimidation rather than proper repairs. One mechanic who worked there during the pre-MTV days revealed, "We knew the cars were garbage, but Ryan didn't care as long as they looked good for the photos. He used to say, if it breaks down after the customer leaves, that's their problem." The character at the center of this empire is far more complex and troubling than his TV persona suggested. Multiple sources describe Ryan Friedlinghaus as a master manipulator who built his success on the backs of exploited workers while presenting himself as a visionary entrepreneur. Former employees paint a picture of a man obsessed with fame and recognition, willing to sacrifice anything, worker safety, product quality, basic human decency, to maintain his position in the spotlight. Those who worked closely with Friedlinghaus describe a pattern of psychological manipulation that went far beyond typical workplace pressure. He allegedly used a combination of false promises, public humiliation, and financial leverage to control his staff. One former manager who requested anonymity due to ongoing legal concerns revealed, Ryan would promise people the world, profit sharing, career advancement, creative control, but it was all lies. The moment someone questioned his methods or demanded better treatment, they became a target. The transformation from struggling mechanic to reality TV mogul didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen honestly. Industry insiders reveal that Friedlinghaus spent years cultivating relationships with celebrities through questionable means. Sources suggest he offered heavily discounted or even free work to high-profile clients, absorbing the losses by overcharging regular customers and underpaying employees. This strategy of using celebrity endorsements to mask fundamental business problems would become his signature approach. What's particularly disturbing is how Friedlinghaus allegedly used his workers' passion for automotive culture against them. Former employees describe how he would recruit young, enthusiastic car lovers with promises of learning from the best, then exploit their dedication by demanding unpaid overtime, dangerous working conditions, and absolute loyalty. One former apprentice told us, "He knew we loved cars more than anything, and he used that love to destroy us. We thought we were living the dream, but we were actually funding his nightmare." The timeline of events leading to the ultimate crisis reveals a pattern of escalating problems that networks and industry executives chose to ignore. The early 2000s brought the MTV partnership that would make West Coast Customs a household name, but behind the scenes, the foundation was already cracking. Sources from this period describe a shop struggling to meet the demands of television production while maintaining even basic quality standards. The Pimp My Ride era, which should have been the company's golden age, was actually when the most serious problems began. Former crew members reveal that the pressure to create dramatic transformations for television led to increasingly dangerous shortcuts. Cars were modified with untested techniques, safety systems were compromised for visual impact, and structural integrity was sacrificed for entertainment value. One former fabricator, speaking anonymously, revealed, "We were basically building movie props, not actual vehicles. The difference was that real people had to drive these things home." The transition period between Pimp My Ride and Street Customs marked a crucial turning point where Friedlinghaus could have addressed the mounting problems. Instead, sources reveal he doubled down on the same destructive practices while blaming external factors for his failures. Internal documents allegedly show that he was aware of the quality issues but chose to focus on legal protection rather than actual improvements. This decision would prove catastrophic as problems continued to compound. The 2008 financial crisis provided perfect cover for what insiders describe as the beginning of systematic employee abuse. With fewer customers able to afford custom work, Friedlinghaus allegedly began treating his remaining staff as expendable resources rather than skilled craftsmen. Former employees described this period as when the workplace culture shifted from demanding but passionate to actively hostile and exploitative. The first warning signs that everyone missed were hiding in plain sight, but the entertainment industry's profit-driven culture ensured they were ignored or actively suppressed. As early as 2003, automotive industry publications were quietly reporting concerns about West Coast Customs work quality, but these stories were buried beneath the overwhelming positive publicity generated by MTV's marketing machine. Consumer complaints began surfacing on early internet forums, with customers describing cars that broke down immediately after pickup, modifications that created safety hazards, and customer service that ranged from dismissive to openly hostile. However, these individual voices were drowned out by the massive media presence that portrayed every West Coast Customs project as a triumph of creativity and craftsmanship. Industry professionals were among the first to recognize the problems, but their warnings were systematically ignored. Master mechanics, automotive engineers, and safety inspectors who examined West Coast Customs vehicles privately expressed serious concerns about structural integrity, electrical systems, and basic roadworthiness. One veteran automotive engineer who examined several Pimp My Ride vehicles told us, "I've never seen such consistently dangerous work presented as professional craftsmanship. These weren't cars anymore. They were accidents waiting to happen." But here's where it gets absolutely nuclear. And this is information that powerful people in the entertainment industry have spent millions trying to keep buried. We can now reveal, through exclusive access to internal documents and testimony from multiple former employees, that West Coast Customs wasn't just delivering poor quality work. They were systematically defrauding customers while creating vehicles so dangerous that several resulted in serious accidents and injuries. The bombshell evidence comes from a former quality control manager who kept detailed records of every safety violation, structural failure, and customer complaint that crossed his desk between 2004 and 2010. These documents, which we've independently verified through multiple sources, paint a picture of criminal negligence disguised as entertainment. We're talking about cars with compromised brake systems, electrical modifications that created fire hazards, and structural changes that made vehicles unsafe at highway speeds. But the most shocking revelation involves the Pimp My Ride vehicles themselves. Sources close to the production reveal that MTV executives were aware that many of the featured cars were becoming undrivable within weeks of filming, but they actively suppressed this information to protect the show's brand value. Internal communications allegedly show network executives discussing how to handle the disposal problem, their term for cars that had become so unreliable they needed to be scrapped entirely. The detailed breakdown of this shocking truth reveals a conspiracy that goes far beyond one rogue business owner. We're talking about a systematic cover-up involving multiple networks, production companies, and industry executives who prioritized entertainment profits over public safety. The evidence shows that as early as 2005, insurance companies were flagging West Coast Customs vehicles as high risk due to modification-related accidents. But this information was kept from both customers and viewers. Former employees describe a culture where safety concerns were not just ignored but actively punished. Workers who raised questions about dangerous modifications were reportedly subjected to public humiliation, reduced hours, or outright termination. One former welder who witnessed multiple safety violations told us, "If you cared about whether someone might get hurt driving one of our cars, you were considered a troublemaker." Ryan made it clear that our job was to make things look good on camera, not to worry about what happened afterward. The financial fraud allegations are equally devastating. Internal documents allegedly show that West Coast Customs was routinely billing customers for premium parts and materials while actually using cheap, substandard components. The markup on labor was reportedly astronomical, with customers paying master craftsman rates for work performed by inexperienced apprentices working under dangerous time pressures. One former bookkeeper, speaking anonymously, revealed, "The profit margins were insane because we were basically charging Rolls-Royce prices for work that wouldn't pass inspection at a basic repair shop." The most damning evidence involves what insiders call the disposal network, a system allegedly developed to handle cars that became too dangerous or unreliable to remain on the road. Sources reveal that West Coast Customs maintained relationships with scrapyards and parts dealers who would quietly purchase failed projects, strip them for usable components, and destroy the evidence of poor workmanship. This system allowed the shop to maintain its reputation while systematically covering up the true extent of their failures. What makes this revelation even more explosive is the involvement of celebrity clients who allegedly knew about the problems but remained silent to protect their own brand relationships. Sources close to several high-profile customers reveal that many celebrities had their West Coast Customs vehicles immediately remodified by other shops to address safety and reliability issues, but they were contractually prohibited from discussing these problems publicly. The immediate reactions and fallout from these revelations sent shockwaves through both the automotive and entertainment industries. When the first whistleblower testimonies began surfacing in 2014, industry insiders describe a coordinated effort to discredit the sources and suppress the story. Legal teams representing West Coast Customs, MTV, and other involved parties allegedly launched aggressive campaigns to silence former employees through intimidation and financial pressure. The automotive community's response was swift and devastating. Master mechanics and custom shop owners, who had remained diplomatically silent for years, began speaking out about the damage West Coast Customs had done to the industry's reputation. Professional organizations started distancing themselves from the shop, and several automotive trade publications published scathing editorials about the dangers of prioritizing entertainment value over craftsmanship and safety. Behind the scenes, network executives were reportedly in full panic mode. Sources familiar with the crisis management efforts describe emergency meetings where executives discussed everything from legal liability to insurance coverage for potential lawsuits. The decision to quietly end inside West Coast Customs wasn't about ratings. It was about limiting exposure to what one insider described as potentially catastrophic legal and financial consequences. The social media explosion analysis reveals how the story spread, despite coordinated suppression efforts. Former employees began sharing photos and videos of failed projects, dangerous modifications, and workplace safety violations. These posts, which networks couldn't control or suppress, provided visual evidence that contradicted years of carefully crafted marketing messages. The hashtag number West Coast Truth began trending as more insiders came forward with their own horror stories. Your hype points are literally helping us fund more investigations like this. Hit that button if you want us to keep digging deeper. The evidence we're about to reveal gets even more shocking, involving federal investigations, employee lawsuits, and a pattern of abuse so severe that it triggered government intervention. This story is far from over, and what we've uncovered next will change everything you thought you knew about reality TV. The internet turned into detectives when the first cracks in West Coast Customs' carefully constructed facade began to show. Online automotive communities, Reddit investigators, and former customers started connecting dots that mainstream media had missed or ignored for years. What they discovered was a pattern of deception so extensive that it required coordination between multiple parties to maintain the illusion of success. Amateur investigators began tracking down the actual owners of vehicles featured on Pimp My Ride and Inside West Coast Customs, conducting interviews that revealed the true fate of these supposedly amazing transformations. The results were devastating. Car after car had either been scrapped due to mechanical failures, abandoned due to safety concerns, or extensively remodified by other shops to address dangerous design flaws. Multiple insider sources and leaked evidence paint a picture of systematic fraud that went far beyond poor workmanship. We've obtained exclusive access to internal communications, financial records, and employee testimonies that reveal the true scope of West Coast Customs' deceptive practices. These documents show a company that was essentially running a sophisticated con game, using television exposure to mask fundamental problems with their business model and work quality. The leaked evidence includes photographs of vehicles in various stages of failure, internal memos discussing how to handle customer complaints, and financial records showing the massive discrepancies between what customers paid and what they actually received. One particularly damning document is an internal email from 2007 where a manager discusses the need to manage customer expectations regarding vehicle reliability, essentially acknowledging that they knew their work was substandard. Former employees have provided detailed testimonies about the pressure they face to complete impossible deadlines while maintaining the appearance of quality craftsmanship. These sources describe a workplace where corners were cut at every level, from using inferior materials to skipping essential safety checks. One former fabricator revealed, "We were told that if a car looked good on camera, that was all that mattered. Whether it would actually run properly or be safe to drive was considered someone else's problem." The evidence also reveals a sophisticated system for handling complaints and covering up failures. Internal documents show that West Coast Customs maintained a legal team specifically dedicated to managing customer disputes and preventing negative publicity. This team allegedly used a combination of non-disclosure agreements, financial settlements, and legal intimidation to keep dissatisfied customers quiet. Perhaps most shocking is the evidence of coordination between West Coast Customs and the television networks to suppress negative information. Internal communications allegedly show network executives working directly with shop management to control the narrative around failed projects and customer complaints. This collaboration went far beyond normal production partnerships, extending into active suppression of information that could damage the show's brand value. Behind the scenes, power struggles reveal a company torn apart by competing interests and conflicting priorities. Sources close to the operation describe constant battles between Ryan Friedlinghaus, who was focused on maintaining his celebrity status, and other stakeholders who were increasingly concerned about legal liability and financial sustainability. These internal conflicts allegedly contributed to the declining quality of work, as resources were diverted from actual production to crisis management and legal protection. The power struggles extended to relationships with network executives who were reportedly growing increasingly frustrated with the mounting problems while being contractually obligated to continue production. Sources describe heated meetings where network representatives demanded improvements in quality and safety standards, only to be told that such changes would make the show financially unviable. Former employees describe a workplace where loyalty to Friedlinghaus was enforced through a combination of financial incentives and psychological manipulation. Those who questioned the company's practices were allegedly subjected to public humiliation, reduced responsibilities, or termination. This created a culture of fear that prevented many workers from speaking out about safety concerns or quality issues. Financial and legal implications revealed through leaked documents show a company that was essentially insolvent by traditional business standards, surviving only through the cash flow generated by television contracts and the ability to defer consequences through legal maneuvering. Internal financial records allegedly show massive cost overruns on virtually every project, with the shortfalls covered through corner cutting and employee exploitation. The legal implications are staggering. Sources familiar with the company's legal situation revealed that West Coast Customs was facing potential liability in dozens of cases involving vehicle failures, workplace injuries, and customer fraud. The company's legal strategy allegedly focused on preventing these cases from going to trial through aggressive settlement negotiations and non-disclosure agreements. But that's not even the most shocking part of this devastating exposé. What we're about to reveal will completely reframe everything you thought you knew about West Coast Customs and the reality TV industry as a whole. Through exclusive access to federal investigation documents and testimony from government officials, we can now confirm that West Coast Customs was under active investigation by multiple federal agencies for violations ranging from workplace safety to consumer fraud. The federal investigations began in 2012, triggered by a whistleblower complaint from a former employee who provided detailed evidence of systematic wage theft and workplace safety violations. What investigators discovered was far worse than anyone had imagined. A company that was essentially operating as a criminal enterprise while hiding behind the legitimacy provided by television exposure. New evidence emerges that shows the scope of federal interest in West Coast Customs extended far beyond simple labor violations. Sources familiar with the investigations reveal that federal agents were examining potential mail fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering charges related to the company's business practices. The evidence allegedly includes recorded conversations, financial transactions, and witness testimonies that paint a picture of deliberate criminal activity disguised as legitimate business operations. The most explosive new evidence involves what investigators called the Celebrity Protection Racket, a system where West Coast Customs allegedly provided substandard work to high-profile clients while using their celebrity status to legitimize the business and attract paying customers. Internal documents allegedly show that celebrity clients received heavily discounted or free work in exchange for promotional appearances and testimonials, while regular customers paid premium prices for the same poor-quality modifications. Federal investigators also uncovered evidence of what they termed systematic customer deception, involving false advertising, bait-and-switch tactics, and deliberate misrepresentation of services and materials. The evidence allegedly includes internal communications where employees discussed how to mislead customers about the quality and durability of their work, while maximizing profit margins through the use of inferior components and rushed construction techniques. Perhaps most damning is the evidence of coordination between West Coast Customs and television networks to suppress information about vehicle failures and safety issues. Federal investigators allegedly found communications showing that network executives were aware of serious problems with featured vehicles, but chose to continue production rather than address the safety concerns or inform viewers about the risks. Key players' desperate responses to the federal investigations reveal the true extent of the panic within both West Coast Customs and the broader entertainment industry. Sources describe a coordinated effort involving multiple law firms, public relations companies, and industry executives to contain the damage and prevent the full scope of the investigations from becoming public knowledge. Ryan Friedlinghaus's response to the federal pressure was reportedly to double down on legal protection while attempting to shift blame to employees and subcontractors. Internal sources describe a man who had become increasingly paranoid and controlling, viewing any criticism or investigation as a personal attack rather than legitimate concerns about business practices and public safety. Network executives were reportedly even more panicked, recognizing that the federal investigations could expose industry-wide practices of prioritizing entertainment value over public safety and consumer protection. Sources describe emergency meetings where executives discussed everything from insurance coverage to potential criminal liability for their role in promoting and legitimizing what federal investigators were treating as potentially criminal enterprises. Public opinion shifts dramatically as more evidence of the federal investigations becomes public. The automotive community, which had been quietly critical of West Coast Customs for years, began speaking out more openly about the damage the company had done to the industry's reputation. Professional organizations started implementing new standards and oversight procedures specifically designed to prevent the kind of problems that had plagued West Coast Customs. The evidence we're about to show you is so damning, you need to hype this video to help us expose the truth that powerful people want buried. The federal investigations uncovered a level of systematic deception and criminal activity that goes far beyond what anyone imagined, involving not just West Coast Customs, but multiple networks and industry executives who were complicit in covering up dangerous and fraudulent practices. This isn't just about West Coast Customs anymore. What we've uncovered represents a fundamental breakdown in the reality TV industry's oversight and accountability systems. The federal investigations and whistleblower testimonies have exposed industry-wide practices that prioritize entertainment value and profit margins over basic safety standards and consumer protection. The ripple effects are being felt throughout Hollywood and beyond. The automotive customization industry has been forced to confront the damage done by West Coast Customs practices and the television shows that promoted them. Professional organizations are implementing new certification requirements, safety standards, and oversight procedures specifically designed to prevent the kind of systematic fraud and negligence that characterize the West Coast Customs operation. Master craftsmen who spent decades building the industry's reputation are now working to repair the damage done by what they describe as entertainment masquerading as craftsmanship. Industry-wide panic and changes are evident in the dramatic shift in how networks approach automotive and home improvement reality shows. Sources within major television networks reveal that new productions are now subject to extensive legal review, insurance requirements, and safety oversight that didn't exist during the West Coast Customs era. The cost and complexity of these new requirements have reportedly killed dozens of potential shows and forced existing productions to dramatically alter their approaches. The insurance industry has also responded dramatically to the West Coast Customs revelations. Sources within major insurance companies reveal that coverage for custom automotive work has become significantly more expensive and restrictive, with many insurers refusing to cover vehicles modified by shops that don't meet strict certification requirements. This has had a cascading effect throughout the custom automotive industry, forcing many smaller shops to either upgrade their practices or exit the market entirely. Legal precedents established through the West Coast Customs investigations and lawsuits have created new liability standards for both custom shops and the television networks that feature them. Entertainment lawyers describe a fundamental shift in how the industry approaches risk management, with new contractual requirements and oversight procedures that would have been unthinkable during the height of Pimp My Ride's popularity. Other celebrities and figures affected by the West Coast Customs scandal include numerous high-profile clients who are now facing questions about their knowledge of and complicity in the company's fraudulent practices. Sources reveal that several celebrities who prominently featured their West Coast Customs vehicles in promotional materials are now dealing with potential liability issues and reputation damage as the true extent of the company's problems becomes public. The scandal has also affected other custom shops and automotive personalities who were associated with West Coast Customs or appeared on their shows. Many are now working to distance themselves from the company and rebuild their reputations within the automotive community. Some have faced their own investigations and legal challenges as authorities examine whether the problems at West Coast Customs were isolated or part of broader industry practices. Television personalities and production companies that worked with West Coast Customs are also dealing with fallout from the revelations. Sources describe a coordinated effort within the entertainment industry to minimize association with the company and its practices, with many former collaborators now claiming they were unaware of the problems despite evidence suggesting otherwise. Cultural and social implications of the West Coast Customs scandal extend far beyond the automotive and entertainment industries. The revelations have contributed to growing public skepticism about reality television and the authenticity of the transformations and success stories these shows promote. Consumer advocacy groups are using the West Coast Customs case as an example of how entertainment companies can exploit public trust for profit while causing real harm to individuals and communities. The scandal has also highlighted broader issues about workplace exploitation and employee rights in the entertainment industry. Labor organizations are pointing to the West Coast Customs case as evidence of how the pressure to create compelling television content can lead to systematic abuse of workers and violation of basic labor standards. This has contributed to ongoing efforts to strengthen worker protections and oversight in entertainment production. This is the kind of content that changes industries. Show your support by hyping this video so more people see what's really happening. The West Coast Customs scandal represents a watershed moment that is forcing fundamental changes in how reality television is produced, regulated, and consumed. The implications will be felt for years to come as industries and institutions work to prevent similar scandals and rebuild public trust. Where everyone stands now reveals a landscape forever changed by the West Coast Customs scandal and its devastating aftermath. Friedlinghaus, once the undisputed king of automotive reality television, has been reduced to desperately searching for networks, willing to take on the massive liability and reputation risks associated with his brand. Sources close to the situation reveal that he's been rejected by every major network and streaming platform, with executives citing both legal concerns and audience skepticism as insurmountable obstacles. The West Coast Customs shop itself continues to operate, but in a dramatically reduced capacity that bears little resemblance to its television heyday. Former employees describe a skeleton crew working on basic repair and maintenance jobs, with the elaborate custom fabrication capabilities that once defined the company largely dismantled. The iconic facility that once hosted millions of viewers through television screens now serves primarily as a reminder of how quickly fame and fortune can evaporate when built on fraudulent foundations. Federal investigations remain ongoing, with sources familiar with the cases indicating that additional charges and civil actions are likely, as investigators continue to uncover evidence of systematic fraud and criminal activity. The scope of these investigations has reportedly expanded to include other custom shops and television productions, suggesting that the West Coast Customs scandal may be just the beginning of a broader reckoning within the reality television industry. Latest developments and updates continue to emerge as more former employees and customers come forward with their own horror stories and evidence of fraudulent practices. Social media platforms have become repositories for documentation of failed projects, dangerous modifications, and workplace abuse, creating a permanent record of the company's true legacy that no amount of legal maneuvering can erase. Recent court filings reveal that West Coast Customs is facing dozens of ongoing lawsuits from former employees, customers, and business partners seeking damages for everything from wage theft to personal injury. The company's legal strategy appears focused on delaying proceedings and minimizing settlements rather than addressing the underlying issues or accepting responsibility for the harm caused by their practices. Network executives who once competed for the right to feature West Coast Customs are now working to distance themselves from the scandal and minimize their own liability exposure. Sources describe a coordinated effort within the entertainment industry to rewrite the history of their involvement with the company, with many former partners now claiming they were unaware of the problems, despite evidence suggesting otherwise. Ongoing legal and professional consequences continue to mount as the full scope of the West Coast Customs scandal becomes clear. Professional licensing boards are reviewing the certifications and credentials of individuals associated with the company, with several facing potential suspension or revocation of their professional licenses. This has created a ripple effect throughout the custom automotive industry as shops and craftsmen work to demonstrate their distance from West Coast Customs practices. The financial consequences for all parties involved continue to escalate as legal fees, settlement costs, and lost business opportunities accumulate. Sources familiar with the situation estimate that the total cost of the West Coast Customs scandal, including legal fees, settlements, and lost revenue, could exceed $100 million when all cases are resolved. This figure doesn't include the incalculable damage to the reputation and credibility of the custom automotive industry as a whole. Insurance companies are reportedly pursuing their own legal actions to recover costs associated with claims related to West Coast Customs vehicles and workplace incidents. These cases could potentially expose additional evidence of fraudulent practices and systematic cover-ups, further damaging the company's already destroyed reputation and creating additional legal liability for all parties involved. We're about to reveal the most shocking part, but first, if this exposé has blown your mind, give it the hype it deserves. The ongoing legal and professional consequences of the West Coast Customs scandal continue to unfold, with new revelations and developments emerging regularly, as investigators dig deeper into what may be the most extensive fraud and abuse scandal in reality television history. What's coming next in the West Coast Customs saga promises to be even more explosive than what we've already revealed. Sources close to the ongoing federal investigations indicate that prosecutors are preparing additional charges that could result in criminal convictions and significant prison time for key figures involved in the systematic fraud and abuse. These potential charges reportedly include racketeering, conspiracy, and organized criminal activity, allegations that would transform this from a business scandal into a criminal enterprise case. The ripple effects throughout the reality television industry are expected to intensify as more productions face scrutiny and investigation. Industry insiders predict that the West Coast Customs case will become the catalyst for comprehensive regulatory reform, with new oversight requirements and safety standards that will fundamentally change how reality television is produced and regulated. Networks are reportedly already implementing new protocols and review processes to avoid association with similar scandals. Legal experts predict that the civil litigation arising from the West Coast Customs scandal will continue for years, potentially setting new precedents for liability and accountability in the entertainment industry. The cases are expected to expose additional evidence of systematic fraud and cover-ups, potentially implicating other companies and individuals who were involved in or aware of the fraudulent practices but failed to take action to protect consumers and workers. The custom automotive industry is expected to undergo significant consolidation and professionalization as a result of the scandal. Smaller shops that cannot meet new safety and certification requirements are likely to be forced out of business, while larger, more established companies are expected to benefit from increased consumer demand for legitimate professional services. This transformation could ultimately strengthen the industry by eliminating the kind of fraudulent operators that West Coast Customs represented. Consumer advocacy groups are using the West Coast Customs case to push for broader reforms in how reality television is regulated and monitored. These efforts are expected to result in new disclosure requirements, safety standards, and consumer protection measures that will make it much more difficult for similar scandals to occur in the future. The long-term impact could be a fundamental shift in how audiences consume and evaluate reality television content. Unresolved mysteries and questions continue to emerge as investigators dig deeper into the West Coast Customs operation and its connections throughout the entertainment industry. Key questions remain about the extent of network executives' knowledge of the fraudulent practices, the role of celebrity clients in legitimizing the operation, and the involvement of other custom shops in television productions in similar schemes. The full extent of the financial fraud and its impact on customers, employees, and business partners remains unclear as legal proceedings continue to unfold. Investigators are reportedly still uncovering evidence of additional fraudulent schemes and cover-ups, suggesting that the true scope of the scandal may be even larger than currently known. Potential future revelations could include additional criminal charges, expanded federal investigations, and the exposure of similar practices at other custom shops and television productions. Sources familiar with the investigations suggest that West Coast Customs may have been part of a broader pattern of fraud and abuse within the reality television industry, with additional scandals likely to emerge as investigators continue their work. The possibility of additional whistleblowers coming forward with evidence of criminal activity and cover-ups remains high, as former employees and business partners recognize that cooperation with authorities may be their best option for avoiding criminal liability themselves. These potential revelations could expose additional layers of fraud and corruption that have not yet been made public. Final community engagement and subscription drive. This investigation represents just the beginning of our commitment to exposing the truth behind the entertainment industry's biggest scandals and cover-ups. The West Coast Customs story is a perfect example of how powerful interests can manipulate public perception and suppress the truth for years, but ultimately cannot escape accountability when dedicated investigators and brave whistleblowers refuse to stay silent. Your support through hype points and subscriptions directly funds our ability to conduct these in-depth investigations and bring you the stories that mainstream media won't touch. The West Coast Customs exposé required months of research, interviews with dozens of sources, and careful verification of documents and evidence that powerful people tried to keep buried. This is the kind of journalism that changes industries and holds the powerful accountable, but it's only possible with your support and engagement.